Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make grooving techno like Lumen. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, all of that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. A ton of you guys have requested this one. And yeah, let's dive in. So, we're on 128 BPM, pretty standard sort of main room techno tempo. The first sound here is this lead. So for the notes on the lead, you can see it's pretty simple. What's happening here is this is just kind of like fitting really nicely into the groove. Like if I play it with the kick and bass, it's like we get that da-na-na-na with the bass, and then this comes as like a response to that. So that's the first thing. If you want to make grooving techno and you want to make tracks that really like everything fits together really nicely and everything grooves together, you have to think of this. It's not just a lead here for having a lead's sake. This lead is very carefully placed in the groove to make it work and to make everything really groove together. And yeah, so I recommend, study what's happening in these tracks and just play around with a lot of different stuff until you find something like this that fits really well into the groove. For the actual notes on this one, so it's actually pretty simple. You can see, so we are in the key of C minor, and all we're doing here is it's just C, so the root note, G, the fifth, D, which is the ninth, and then D sharp, which is the minor third. So these three notes actually are the notes that make up like a really basic C minor triad, and then that D is actually just one note down from the D sharp, and then we're just playing with like that dynamic where you give them the ninth, and then you give him the minor third, and it's like that sort of like tension and release there, as well as a call and response between the two little patterns. Now for the sound with this one, it's made with analog, so it's just two saw waves here. You can see they're detuned really slightly. Those are going into a low pass filter, which has an envelope. I've also got some noise going in there. So here's without the filter, and then with it, you can hear that's what gives it more of that like plucky sound, but since the envelope is so high, you still get a lot of brightness out of the synth. Then we got the amp envelope set like that, and then finally I just have a bit of vibrato, and actually quite a bit of vibrato, and a bit of unison, giving this kind of like that big sort of chorusy sound. And yeah, then speaking of that, we have a bit of chorus, as well as a bit of echo and reverb. So these are all just giving the sound some space. You can see I've got this on the ping pong setting. It's just doing 8 notes. The reverb is pretty long, all things considered. With a lead like this, where it just kind of hits, and then stops, and then it hits, and then it stops, you have a bit more room to let it ring out with like reverb and delay and stuff like that, because it's not going to take over the space where the lead is playing. It's like you get that like all that like sort of ringing out stuff, and it fits in there nicely. Then we have this drum bus. You can see this is here. It's hitting pretty hard. This is fattening the sound up a lot. This is really crucial on leads to do. It doesn't have to be drum bus. There's a ton of different things you can use. Sometimes I just use the Ableton Saturator. You can use like Dynamic Tube. There's a bunch of different plugins that will do this as well. But just something like this at the end of the chain to fatten it up and just give it a bit more fullness and really make it, stand out on its own. And then we just have a high pass filter. The next thing we have here are these bass stabs, which sound like this. So as you can hear, these are those little bass sounds that you hear like just kind of coming in every, like, basically in between the lead. Like if you look at these, you'll notice they're all hitting in places where the lead has stopped. So we get like, it's like ba-doom, boom, 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 boom. So yeah, these are just kind of filling in that space. These add a lot of groove to the track and a lot of energy too. Like I'll show you, here's what it sounds like if I turn these off. It's still the track, but it doesn't have like that ear candy that's really like grabbing you and adding to the groove, because when you have these, having a powerful burnout right at the start there, like, really makes it ear grabbing, and it makes people want to listen to your tracks for longer, and it's gonna make them more exciting on the dance floor as well. So that's kind of the theory behind these. For the actual sound, so the first two are made in a very similar way. These are like these more like plucky sort of stabs like this. And you can see they're both made using operators, so it's FM synthesis. This is typically how you want to make these types of sounds, like, because if you just work with saw waves and square waves, you get like a very particular sound. But with FM synthesis, you can create all kinds of different textures, and it works really well to make sounds like this that need to be very like, you know, sort of futuristic and almost like metallic sound. So for the first one, it is made using, it's just a square wave. And then you can see I have two sine waves after that. And they're all at different octaves. I've got the square wave up, and the third one is up as well. And then those are going into a low-pass filter. So the low-pass filter is really key. The secret here is, like, you use the envelopes to kind of make it more plucky. Like, if you look, I've got the envelope of the first oscillator set like that. The second one is even shorter. And then the third one just kind of stays like that because it's getting that envelope from the second one in terms of, like, how it's FMing the first oscillator. So then that on its own, you can hear isn't quite enough. You know, it is plucky, but it's not really that sort of deep sound like you want. And then when I turn this on, there we go. It gives it that extra little bit of like pluckiness, and it makes it really feel like a stab. And the other thing here is the sine shaper. You can see I turned that on inside of the filter. This is really crucial for these as well, because like if I turn this off, you'll notice it's just kind of weak, but then with it, it has a lot more texture and it's a lot fatter. And yeah, and then that's just going through this fast echo. You know, I didn't want to make it too long. You really just want like a quick sort of like feedback like that. Then we just have some drum bus and a high pass filter. And then the second one, like I said, it's actually starting with the same patch, and then I just kind of like changed it up a little bit. So you can see we got that same square wave. We have then two sine waves after it. You can see the octaves are all set. They're all at different octaves. And then this one's going into a bandpass filter. So here's without that. You can hear it's like a very sharp sound, but then with it, that's what makes it that boom boom, kind of like more deep, plucky sound. You can see we got the envelope on there, and I had the sine shaper. And then I had the same effects actually that I had on the first one, because like I said, this was made just by duplicating the first one and changing a few things. And this is a really great way to make these as well. Like if you want to make multiple bass stabs like this in your track and not just have it be like, you know, the same thing the whole way through, you know, all you have to do is just make one and then duplicate it and kind of change a few things, and you can make some really exciting stuff that way. Then we have the third bass stab. So for notes on this one, it's really simple. It's just doing this D sharp and then C. So it's just like you were seeing with the lead. This is just the minor third and then the root note, and then up here it's just playing C an octave up. And then it does that. But yeah, and so this is like a more standard sort of respace sound. You can see we have two saw waves. I've got one an octave up, and then it's being detuned a bit. And then we just have amp envelope set like that. I've got the unison there, and then that's it for inside the synth. Like I said, it's a very simple patch. But then we have it going into some chorus, then a bit of amp. So this amp is what gives it that like crunchy, sort of nasty texture. Here's without that. And then with it. So it also just, it's giving it the crunch and like the texture you want, but it's also just making it like a lot more, just like a bigger sound, you know, it just feels a lot more full. And yeah, so then we've got the reverb after that. I've got a bit of drum bus as well, beefing it up. Then we just have a high pass filter, and then a compressor side chaining this to the kick. And that's it for that bass stab. And then we have the kick bass, which sounds like this. So what we got going on here is we have three layers. We have this kick, just like your standard sort of fat techno kick, got it going through a bit of drum bus. We have this rumble, which is made using actually the same kick, but then I have it pitched a bit differently, because you can see it's playing this like low note, and then I pitched it up +8. So that's just like your standard sort of rumble bass, you know, just playing 16th notes. like that, and then you can see that's just going through some drum bus. I've got it being sidechained to the kick, and then I also have an EQ8 cutting out a little bit of room for the kick, and then it's also being low pass, which of course, that's how you make the rumble. And then we have the bass. So this is actually a pretty simple bass patch. What it is it's operator, but it's not doing any FM because I have it set to this algorithm, which just basically has all 4 oscillators playing side by side. And you can see what's happening here is we've got a saw wave and a square wave together. So this makes a very fat sound because you're pretty much covering like all the harmonic sort of ranges. And then this is just playing this droning low C, because again, that's the key we're in. It just slides up to that C an octave up. And yeah, super simple bass. Then that's just going through a bit of a low pass filter. I've got an envelope on that. That's what's giving it that pluck. We've got a bit of drum bus as well. Just that's what's beefing it up. Then we have a compressor side chaining into the kick, a high pass filter to make sure it doesn't get in the way of the rumble, and then this cut here, which just makes a bit of room for the kick. And then on the group of those, we just have a bit of saturation. So this is the thing, like, you want to do something at the end of the chain to kind of like, get it all glued together and kind of make them come together as one thing. But if you have good sounds already, you don't have to do too much. Like a lot of times in the past, I would use drum bus here and have it hitting super hard. And it's like, if you already have like a pretty powerful kick, a pretty good bass, all that kind of stuff, you're not going to need too much. You just need like a little bit to kind of glue these together. So here's without this. And then with it, again, just gives it that extra push to glue the kick and the bass together. And yeah, then we have the percussion. So I'll break this down kind of like from what each layer is doing. First we have this rim shot and this clap. You can hear these are hitting pretty frequently. These are kind of like that extra thing that's giving a lot of push to the groove and, just really making it feel like really bringing you into the groove. So yeah, just having like a little rim shot just going like do every bar, and then having a clap that's playing pretty frequently as well. You're just doing like that. It goes a long way because these are adding a lot of groove and movement to the track. Then we have the main clap. So this is a really big thing. If you want to make like groovy techno tracks, typically, just having the type of track where you just have like the kick, that is a vibe. But then when you add this, it just gives it that extra like push of groove. So I definitely recommend experimenting with this if you're trying to make these style of more groovy tracks. And with this one, you'll notice I have it ever so slightly before the beat. So if I play this with the kick, like I'll solo just the kick and the clap, you'll notice it's kind of like boom, boom, like that. It just makes the clap hit a little bit more because if we put it right on the beat, you don't really hear the impact of the clap as much. So yeah, small trick if you want to make your claps hit harder. It's not always about processing. Then the last percussion layer is just this roll. So it's just playing in the background. This is something I've noticed in a lot of these style of tracks. It just gives you that extra kind of like, movement. To just have that constantly going in the background. So this is just this short, like literally, it's a quarter note that I've just looped over and over. And then it's going through a bandpass filter, which you can see I've got an LFO on there, so that's what's making it move. The other thing about this is like, it's giving your track a lot of movement because you have this thing constantly changing and evolving over the course of the track. And then we just have it going through some drum bus. And then we just have a bit of drum bus on the group of the percussion, so here's without that. And then with it, and you'll notice like this is pretty hard drum bus. And if you look at the cymbals, like I didn't even do the cymbals this hard. They're just going through some saturation. This is why I like to split it. Like typically, of course, you're going to put all your percussion and cymbals in a group. And you can put the percussion and the cymbals together. But if you put them separately and just process them each individually, you can get the percussion hitting a lot harder, essentially, because you can put a lot stronger saturation on it that you wouldn't be able to put if you also had the cymbals going through the same saturation. So that's the idea there. And yeah, then speaking of which, we have the cymbals. So let's go down the line with these. We have the shaker and closed hi-hat. So you can hear the shaker is just doing like straight 16th notes. And then the hi-hat plays on like every other 16th note essentially. So it's like and yeah, this actually adds a lot of energy to your track because it's like, you know, just listen to that on its own. Like listen to just the shake. That sounds cool, but then just having like that, that's adding so much energy in a really subtle way. Like you don't always notice this, but your brain does notice that there's something extra going on there that feels like more special. Then we have the open hi-hat, which sounds like this. And this is 2 layers. We have the actual open hi-hat. But then if you notice, that has a lot of body to it and a lot of mid-range and all that. It doesn't really have like that much punch or high-end. So then I layered on this more like closed hi-hat, which you can hear this is all punch and high-end. So then you put these together. And there you go, it makes the perfect hi-hat. And you'll notice like with the layering here, you know, you don't have to do any kind of EQ or anything, any compression, anything like that, because it's just 2 sounds that, you know, complement each other. Like one has a lot of nice mid-range but not a lot of high-end, and one has a lot of nice high-end but not a lot of mid-range. So when you put them together, you don't have to do any EQ or compressing them or any weird extra stuff like that. It's just 2 sounds that sound good together, playing together. And yeah, and then the last thing we have down here is the ride. So that's your standard sort of techno ride, you know, just like a 909 style thing. You can see I've got this being high passed a bit, and then it's going into this echo. So it's important to make these rides like really wide in your mix. Like just having that like width with that really makes a big difference, because all the other hi-hats are mostly down the center. You know, it's pretty much just like, you know, right in, it's not mono, but it's very much happening in the center. So if you also have the ride happening in the center of your stereo field, it's not really going to sit right. Like you're not going to really be able to hear it properly because it's getting buried. But if you spread it out like this, you can hear it over top of everything. I'll show you, like if I turn the echo off, see how it kind of gets more buried? So yeah, that's the idea here, and all you have to do is just turn on this ping pong setting, and then you just give it a really fast time. And that'll create that like stereo width so that it'll stand apart in the mix and just feel a lot more professional too, you know, it just gives your track an extra touch. And then the final thing on here is I've just got some drum bass just to kind of beef that up a little bit. And then we just have all the cymbals going through some saturation and an EQ. So here's without this, which for A-B purposes, I'll turn these up. So here's without it. And then with it, so you can hear, even when they're at the same volume, with this saturator, it's still just a lot fatter and more full sounding. You know, it's tying all the hi-hats together and really making the mix on the cymbals feel even, as well as just making them fat and making them stand out in the track. And then on this EQ here is just cutting out some lows and boosting some highs. Pretty simple stuff there, but yeah. So that is it for the hi-hats, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video. It's available right at the top of the description. It's a great way to support me if you guys enjoyed this video, and if you just want some cool sounds to work with. It's definitely one of the best techno videos I think I've ever made. As always, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.